Art begins with ideas. As an artist, you come up with these ideas. Maybe they're not artwork per se, but they're seeds of something. Then you start to sketch, you start to plan for it, and it's trying to take shape. At some point, anything that transmits an idea, expresses something, propagates in some way, it serves a purpose, it carries a seed, it carries a concept, maybe it's an artwork in place already. It's hard to say at what point that becomes a life of its own like that. But they all began with something. It began with the idea, a fully conceived idea. It began the process of presenting to the institutions, to the museums, whoever it might be. Sometimes the permit process began. Sometimes it ended at a very early stage. Sometimes it did not end to the very last possible moment it wasn't realized. There is a process there. There's a life there. It was given birth already, and it exists as artwork. One great thing about men is that it's full of ideas. In the history that's brought us here, the footsteps of men are carried through by a series of ideas and concepts that push us forward. Whether some of these ideas or concepts were realized physically is less important. People hear about a fireworks show and they go out in the middle of the night in the night sky and they expect to see these bright lights that come up, take form, and they say, that's beautiful. It was a beautiful show. Versus you go out there and the artist describes, say, and then you see this and you see that. It may be one and the same, but the thing is, people are not there to see the night sky. They're there to see the sparks specifically. But it's hard to say where one ends and when where begins.
The history of the Guo-Qiang family dates back to 1850. And my grandfather's grandfather, my great-great-grandfather, started the business back in Bari, Italy, a little south seaport town. And back then in 1850, it was his trade was trading fruits, vegetables, and produce, but he made fireworks. My great-grandfather made fireworks for competition. So he would make shells, then there would be competition, and back then it was competition one shell at a time, and you'd compete against each other for the craft of making one shell. So one shell would fire, and you may have 10, 15 different effects in it, and that's what the competition was about. Then when it transitioned here to the States, it became more, I don't want to say commercialized, became more for a business. Their form of income and a way of living was fireworks. My grandfather became such that he brought us to Monte Carlo, my grandfather and father, back in the early 70s, where we competed on a worldwide stage, and we were fortunate to win that competition, and that catapulted us into the forefront of exhibition pyrotechnics or display fireworks, doing many world-class programs coast to coast, and then some overseas. So we're now into our 5th generation. Myself and my cousins are into the 5th generation, and my children hopefully will make up the 6th generation. We're going to bring that up in a few years. They're only 15 and 11 right now, but they have the twinkle in their eye, similar to the way I did. Maybe I was working with my father and my grandfather and uncle when I was 6 and 7 years old, out on a barge, and that's how you get it in your blood. You get it in your blood, you hear the reaction of the audience, you see you have immediate results of the work that you do throughout the day, and there's no way to turn back. Once you get it into your blood, it's like a drug, but it's a pleasant way to wake up in the morning knowing that you're going to entertain people and make them happy. I can't think of another job that I'd want to do. The first time we were approached by Cai and his team, he wanted to do this fused effect, which is his exhibit, The Heavenly Ladder, in the Armory, and he wanted to discharge it at Manhattan. And I had to ask, before we sold that kind of material, we have to get licenses, and we have to, they have to have insurance and things like that. And where are you going to be using it? And they were going to use it in the Army, and that's when our collaboration started, because he needed the abilities for someone to run the operations and logistics, permitting and compliance, to make sure he wasn't putting himself in a position of liability. He was invited out to the plant, and then we had an opportunity, himself and I, to sit in our conference room and exchange ideas of what we each direction we had and what our desires were, and where my direction was with our company as far as the design. Certainly had an opportunity to see what he's done before and what he wanted to do in the future, and it became a good union, a very good family, and a very good complement to each other, where we could go to the next level and create something that's never been seen before. And then from that point on, we went and produced the largest fireworks program in the history of China in Shanghai for the Asian Pacific Economic Convention, the APEC convention. And then we've done a whole host of other projects, the Transient Rainbow over the river for the Museum of Modern Art. We've gone to London, did a program there for the Tate Museum, Light Cycle in Central Park, and each project becomes more and more elaborate. Cai absolutely has been a great part in pushing myself and our company with the technology. He perseveres and he continuously is very persistent on moving forward and creating these effects that have not been seen before. We have had the opportunity to do things similar to that in other venues. The Millennium Celebration right here in Washington, D.C., when we were challenged to put pyrotechnics, 3,000 of them, right upside the Washington Monument after they got done cleaning it for $10 million. So we look at it too and say, we want to do the most aggressive effects under control, keeping them safe. That's available to us, and he has been, a great ambassador towards that type of demonstrations. It was a great union, and it looks like the future is very bright for us because he continues to be aggressive in his designs. We continue to be aggressive in our abilities to develop, engineer, and produce those designs. And, I'm looking forward to seeing what we have coming up in the future. The key is all the sequencing, how we fire it, the exact time when that center one fires, because the center cone, the center Pixelburst may have only a half a second lift time on it. So as soon as you as soon as the charge comes from the computer, it's a half a second, but boom, it goes right above the mortar. Where the items that maybe are on the top are 5 and 6 second lift times. So if the tornado's evolution is going to start from the top and come down like this, naturally we have to fire those shells that are at the highest point first to get that to start, and then as they come down, the middle ones will be fired, and then ultimately the bottom ones get fired very last. If you do the whole thing in reverse, which we're going to do, a chase going from the bottom up, the top shells still need to be fired first because the chase lasts a total of 5 seconds. The shell, say, is 6 seconds. The first one's launching, and then the bottom ones are coming up to meet it. So it's very, very precise. When you look at the computer, it's doing 5 and 6 signals, 5 or 6 ignitions per second in some cases, and sometimes faster than that. So that's why we could never do this with the push of a button. We rely heavily on our firing systems and the integration of our customized software with the technology of the Pixelburst to create the effect. The risk management that we put into play for the tornado was very similar to the risk management we would do for any other program. Meaning, we'd come do the site inspection, we make sure distances are there from the point that we discharge the tornado to where the audience is going to be. Pyrotechnicians are much closer, but they're in a bunker out on the barge. The angles in which we're firing, that the angles are not so dramatic that we're firing things towards the audience or towards the shorelines where the audience would be put into harm's way. The difference is that the pattern is just different. What we're going to put in the sky is in a different orientation and a different sequence, but we're still discharging a 3-inch in diameter aerial shell that's going to explode 50 feet in diameter, but we're shooting multiple thousands of them within a 15-second period of time. There's a very large quantity of product in a very concentrated space. So we're putting our pyrotechnicians in a steel shelter. The distances are a little further away from the audience than what it would normally be. And that's really the paramount difference between any standard fireworks program that we would design or a major world-class program, say, that we may do on the 4th of July, to this project. It's because it's what we would typically shoot at a 4th of July show in 20 minutes, fired in 15 seconds. So you could see everything is concentrated, and the additional precautions we take is in the protection of the pyrotechnicians. Because if something should go wrong, it's going to be very quick, but it would be very violent. So they have to be in a protective shelter to prevent from that ever happening. When we fire the tornado, the first sequence is going to be 6.5 seconds, and there's about 400 shells that are fired. Pixelbursts in 6.5 seconds. So there's only so many controls you can have, and just in some cases you're holding your breath and you're watching that happen, and then you move to the next one. Before you move to the next sequence, everything still needs to be in its intended state. Then you move to the next sequence, and then move to the next sequence. So we try to mitigate, but at the same token, we're dealing with a live performance. We're dealing with an energetic material that's manufactured by hand. And we're always trying to protect ourselves with what could go wrong. We are dealing with a hazardous material. We're working every day with explosives. I have my family that we're constantly together, but surrounding us is a tremendous amount of very energetic material. So daily and by the minute, you're constantly reminding yourself what you're working with. You never get complacent with that commodity, with the material that we're working with. My grandfather used to always tell me, the day that you think you know everything is the day that you're going to get hurt, because you're being more complacent and you're going forward, not thinking about the commodity and the material that you're handling. Tomorrow night will be the first time we'll actually see the tornado in its fullest embellishment, all the product and the volume and the speed and tempo. But we've done a tremendous amount of testing back at our facility in New York, to the extent where we'll fire the Pixelbursts and qualify and calibrate the heights. So we know a shell with certain characteristics, certain mortar size, certain lifting, certain chip duration will be at 60 feet. Another one will be at 80 feet. We've captured all of that data, but the volume we've not fired. Naturally, if we can get some customer to pay for 2 shows, that would be great, but at this point in time, the volume has not been truly tested. So we have the test of individual pixels to create the picture, but when you look at the scene, like the evolution, where we're going to fire 1,000 shells in 10 seconds, certainly that has not been completed. That doesn't typically get done on any fireworks program, for that matter. You don't shoot the whole show, say, okay, it looks great, and go fire it again in front of an audience. But each individual device and characteristics of the height have all been tested. Also the equipment itself and the firing systems and things like that, we have routines that we can go through to test to make sure current is going through every single one of these shells. Every pixel burst, we have a way of testing that current goes through them, but beyond that, we can't shoot it, because if we fire it, it's a destructive test. You shoot it and go, okay, that one worked, but you got to load another one, and it's the same characteristic. So it's very interesting, and that's what kind of turns the screws a little tighter when it comes time for showtime, because it's a dynamic type of a medium that we're using in this art form. There's 2,462 Pixelburst shells, and loaded on the inside of each one of these fiberglass mortars is a single Pixelburst shell. The Pixelburst shell is 3 inches in diameter.
That's the lift charge. This is the shell. And this is the time. And this is like a computer chip. So it goes off when we want it to go off. That's basically it.
What you're looking at behind me is the rack layout, which the racks are these wooden assemblies that have fiberglass mortars in them. And loaded on the inside of each one of these fiberglass mortars is a single Pixelburst shell. You see all the pink lines that are coming out of each one of the mortars. Every single shell is individually wired. There's 2,462 Pixelburst shells that are loaded. The scene here on the right, which looks like a starburst of an arrangement of racks, is set for a reason. They're all positioned in their spot and also have an angle on them to be able to create the cone effect of a tornado. Naturally, on the bottom of the cone of a tornado, it's narrow, and on the top, it's wider. So you see the center racks. What's the Pixelbursts will be fired from there, which make up the bottom of the cone, which is tighter in a pattern. And as the racks go out further wider, the shells will be higher, and they'll create the upper cone of the tornado. And then we've tilted everything somewhat on a slant. So as you know, a tornado typically is on an angle like that. The entire cone, funnel shape, if you will then be tilted on an angle when it fires. So all of those angles have all been calculated prior to us coming here, and we use the sand and certain wood chocks to assure that each one of those guns is at the proper angle, to assure that the effect has the best foundation to start with.
Right before the show, you see the site again, you see the stage, and you might feel like, is it enough? Do I have enough? This afternoon, we made really great progress. We were on site, the installation site. We made adjustments to the segment with the dancing boats, with the products. We made adjustments to the timing. We actually called in more materials products that will be brought in tomorrow to beef up certain sections, to make it fuller, make it a little bit more exciting. So that's really great. And also seeing the installation site for the tornadoes is really encouraging. It shows you the sense of scale, the number of shells is going to be there. It really helps you project what you might see. So compared to yesterday afternoon, I feel much more at ease.
I'm feeling pretty good. Our biggest challenge in a project like this is dealing with a timeline that's absolute. We certainly can't ask for another day or another 2 days if we're not prepared for it. But we have a crew of 9 pyrotechnicians that are down on the barge right now that are loading the thousands of shells that are needed, the Pixelbursts that are needed for the tornado, and everything is on schedule. So far, everything has been going very well. In fact, sometimes you say it's a little too quiet right now, but everything's been going really well.
Because we're on boats, you cannot possibly run wires over the river, and they'll get all tangled up. So basically, the pyrotechnicians will be just listening by a walkie-talkie, and we have to rehearse it beforehand, so they will know when to fire a series of shots. So the choreography we're talking about, not just the boats, but on the pyrotechnic side, very much as well, because typically you just run it by a computer script. And once you push play, everything, if you have it rehearsed, everything should go well. Whereas here, there's 9 boats variables, and there are 6 sections and then there are 3-4 products per section. So you can see how many variables there are in having to control to make sure everything goes well perfectly.
We fired off of boats before. We've never put a ballet together like this before, as elaborate as it is. So to that extent, we have fired off of plenty of boats. And the boats are just going in one direction, and they'll make one pass past the audience and go away. This case, they're coming onto stage, the stage being the river, and then performing for 6 minutes, and then going away, and then the tornado will produce. So that's the one thing that does make me a little concerned, but we'll pull it off. It'll be fine. It'll be beautiful.
The timing of the firing, how that will work out with the certain movement, certain segment, this all has to be very carefully planned. Yet, you cannot have unlimited time with this kind of rehearsal on the river. That's just not realistic. So we have 1 full day of practice, and we have the day before, we have a limited number of boats, and then on the day of the event, we have a full rehearsal. But it's like saying we're going to put on a play, all the actors come the day before, we'll have a few run-throughs, and that night we're going to open to a few thousand people. It's like that. All this rehearsal is without fireworks. So it's not a full dress rehearsal. It's not possible. So of course we have to be very vigilant about all the scripting and all the preparation beforehand. But there's really an enormous amount of things that could go wrong that you have to really try to think and anticipate.
What might go wrong on Tornado, as it might go wrong in any other fireworks program, is you have a complete non-firing of anything. The computers go down, so we have redundant computers. The winds are high, so we can't control certainly the higher elevation products. In that case, if it's up around 20 miles an hour, depending on the direction of the wind, the show might be needed to be modified. The barge would be moved away in one particular direction. We have a catastrophic failure of one of the Pixelbursts in the mortar that does damage to the mortars. We have certain abilities with our computer system to shut things down and turn things off so they're not just firing out of control. Those are pretty much the highlight things that could go wrong. Tomorrow morning our job will be to come out, finish loading the boats. We'll harness all the cables into the computer systems. This container will be moved onto the barge. We'll plug in all the computer systems and do a series of tests that we have to do here at the dockside. At 2 o'clock in the afternoon approximately, the barge will leave from this dock. The pyrotechnicians will go out with it They have some tests that they do during the tow, just some continuity and sequential testing and things of that nature. The barge will be then anchored out in the middle of the river somewhere around 5 o'clock tomorrow evening. We'll be on location from that point on, communicating with the Marine Patrol, Fire Department, Coast Guard. When this barge leaves here, it gets escorted by all three of those agencies, and then they'll stay with the barge and secure the river for the area that the barge is in. And from that point on, it's hurry up and wait. We wait for that moment for you at the Kennedy Center to say go, and then Cy and I take ourselves a little breather, suck in a big breath of air, and push that button and let it go. So we're hoping and expecting some great things out of this exhibit.
Locations were about 10 seconds from the first.
10 seconds.
10 seconds.
10 seconds.
10
10 seconds.
10 seconds, we're at 10 seconds.
Maybe you should just keep on the phone with her the entire time. 10 seconds. 10 seconds.
Stand by. Fire one.
Here we go.
Fire two. Fire two, guys. Fire two.
它不只是一级，就是它要两个。你看它这个 speed 是
Fire 3.
我觉得有点快，这个太慢了。
就没有就加倍这个。
Can we？
Fire 4.
忙的就是开始说4、5、6，他一直在一个在。
让它打自己。
Can Larry speed up a bit?
Okay, speed up as much as you can, Larry. With the guys, it's looking good. Make your next S. There you go, Larry. Perfect. Fire 5. Fire 6.
现在这里现在是正常。
Smoke.
Yeah, I was saying.
下一个
Now there's a plate.
转机刚我发现，对它那个转上去，
Fire 12.
能够一直转圈，
已经往左边了。
现在看
Fire 18. Fire 19. Fire 18 and 19, guys. Fire 18 and 19.
打出来，有些打出来。
Fire 20. Fire 21.
Exit stage. No, exit stage. 走了哈，不要再走了。
然后让它点，最后留一个穿。
Fire 24. Fire 25. All boats head back towards the bridge. Turn around and head back to the bridge. Head back to the bridge.
Komoro.
Head back to the
Okay,
bridge.
go Komoro.
Go back to the bridge. Do not go any further. Back to the bridge. Chris, are you standing by?
Oh, comment. 这就是 comment.
Let the smoke. Let the smoke. Let the smoke.
Perfect, perfect. Let them go
现
out.
在等 smoke，
Let the smoke clear. Okay.
而且 let them go out.
Yeah, they're leaving. Let the smoke clear.
现在让他们都知道他们要走这边了。
对，他们知道，你之前说过了。
一路上马德给他赛，smoke 多一个了，肯定有一个。
最重要的还没有开始。
他走马德给他
So
赛，
how long do you think?
Plane come by too.
给他们说在等烟散。
Plenty of time.
在等烟散，就跟他们讲说现在等烟散。
How long do you think? Let me give a
Chris, we're
photographer.
just holding for
没有，
these
你跟他
airplanes.
们讲在等
人都进去了，
It's not nice, right?
It's not over yet.
给他
Over
跟他们讲还是 over 哎，在等烟散。
先打一炮，打一炮，打一个。
打一个什么？怎么可以随便打一个？
对他们都走了。
没有办法，再快点，
他们全都 Q 好了，不用打的。
现在我们准备好了，现在我们在1分钟，也在30秒。
Can we do a 30
Yeah.
second count?
Ready?
对，
30 seconds.
30秒，啊到30秒。
30 seconds. 30 seconds. 30 seconds until tornado.
あと25秒。トンネル来ます。飞機有来。
20 seconds. Are they
I'm counting. I'm waiting for your clear. We're ready.
20 seconds?
We're clear.
20 seconds?
Yeah, 20 seconds.
20 seconds.
20 seconds. 20 seconds.
I don't have a stopwatch on.
Alright, I'm just rolling off.
Just making it up.
20 seconds, stand by, 20 seconds. We're going in 20 seconds.
10 seconds.
10 seconds. 10 seconds.
Okay, you can just do the countdown with the guys.
Stand by for event 4.
准备等一下。
Fire event 4.
Okay, 可以有什么？
待ってください。ちょっと待ってください。次また来ます。ちょっと待ってください。
Wait for the plane. Wait for the plane. Wait
对，
for the
等
plane.
一下那个飞机过来，
等他飞机过来。
这样也很像，
Yeah,
这个很像，特别漂亮，很像。Awesome! Awesome! mostly.
Oh yeah. 3 more. Yeah. All right, can I take it?
Yeah, go ahead.
Fire event 5.
Oh, the bottom can go. Bottom can go.
All right,
底
let's
下
stop.
啊，
I don't know the condition of those mortars. Let's hold on. Let me go take a look.
他等一下，看看有什么有问题，底下没炸出来。
No, we're not gonna go yet.
没问题是吧？
先别说，他要等烟走一下，他要看看底下什么问题再下去。Do you see something?
If it's not safe, we're not gonna do it. Okay, we got one off. If it's not safe, we're not gonna do
还
it.
有问他，还要
他要
把身上。
安全。No, they're just checking something. There's something. There was a spark, so they're just checking something. Just wait for the smoke to go and then do it again.
Standing by for your cue, Chris. Standing by for your advisor.
移一下。
He's checking now to see the orientation to make sure nothing is out of orientation.
Yeah. And if one side is not good, we'll just do the evolution. Just because evolution is separate and power. We'll just do that.
Are there racks that are out of place? What's your opinion? Are you comfortable with going with it or not? Okay, 10-4. We're gonna do the evolution only.
OK，不做傻了，只做那个成长。
OK，
OK，
第4次不做了，第4次不做，只做第3次。
你要跟他们说是。
Stand
Show me
by.
what you want.
3回目もやらない、4回目やらない、3回目終わったら終わり。
How long？
Chris, bring it back.
あと最後の1回。どっち？
Did you turn the firepower key off?
Jennifer, we skipping anything?
We're skipping the last one. So when
Chris, did
when
you
the
turn the
evolution
firepower
goes,
key
we
off?
should start tapping. Because something
Filter
got
Chris, come
blown
back.
out of formation for the last flash. So we're not going to do that.
Chris, did you turn the firepower key off when you went out there? And are we gonna have a problem with the recycling? Okay, we're ready. Are you ready to go?
9秒。
Can we say 10?
Yes.
10 seconds. 10 seconds.
10 seconds on the cameras. 10 seconds on the
Wait for the
camera.
let's wait for the plane.
Wait, hold.
Stop. No, stop.
We'll wait for the plane.
The airplane
Wait
coming.
for the plane. It's terrible. I can't believe that these.
可以了吧
Okay.
Can we go?
Okay, you ready, Chris?
？10 seconds. 10 seconds.
10 seconds. Here we go. 10 seconds.
10 seconds.
Stand by on the cameras.
Fire event set. Okay, my friend, just be very safe out there and make sure that obviously stay away from all that equipment. Excellent.
The dancing was really beautiful. I didn't expect to see the with the lights, with the boats, the movement, a reflection on the water, everything. It was very theatrical, really beautiful.
是我感到他们至少可以。
I think we can easily see the shape of the tornado, especially for the first and the last segment of the firing.
Well, it was a little delay, as you saw, because we wanted to make sure everything was safe out there, because safety is number one. But my pyrotechnicians went out, assessed the situation, came back, we made the decision, and got the evolution to go. So it was good. It was excellent. My guys did a great job. It's the most relief that you feel. You can't imagine the feeling right now, the sense of draining. But very excited, very happy with the outcome. Extremely pleased with the outcome. It was excellent.
很棒，对。
It was really awesome. It's more exciting than I anticipated.